Hello everyone, I'm your host Griffin, and today's topic is Doctors and Nurses of Reddit. Have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? What happened? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. The hospital where I was a med student had a baby born with high drops, which is where a baby gets two bad copies of a red blood cell gene, one from each parent. Baby died shortly after birth. Parents came in for genetic counseling and testing revealed the woman's husband did not carry the alpha thalassemia gene. The couple asked what was the chance another baby of theirs would have this condition. The doctors were honest and told them 0%. They left it at that. Had a mum-to-be who had narrowed the options for baby daddy down to her top 3. She was having a C-section and didn't understand why all 3 potential dads couldn't come into theater. She then asked if we could rotate them through, and maybe she'd let the one that was there when baby came out be the real daddy. Took all my professionalism to smile politely. Not a doctor, but my wife grew up in a really small town, but wasn't born there. When she got her first crush on a boy and told her best friend, the friend was like, "Did you talk to your mom yet?" Apparently, adultery was so widespread in this area, it was common practice for girls to talk to their mom about crushes and who the crush's parents were so they didn't end up dating their half-sibling. My brother's best friend didn't resemble his father while growing up, so he became more and more suspicious. The father eventually did a DNA test when my brother's friend was 11 or 12, and found out it's not his. The parents split up with the older daughter, 16, going with the father because she resembled him, so he was sure about her. A nurse friend of mine told me about helping with a vasectomy when the doctor saw that the patient, a married father of 2 children, was clearly infertile and would have been all his life. Due to the man taking Valium before the local anesthetic, the doctor made the guy come back for a follow-up where he had to explain the man's medical condition to him. No idea what the fallout was. I'm a midwife. I once had a woman come to my clinic unannounced. She wasn't my patient, but I'm NHS so saw her anyway. She had a man with her. She knew she was about 3 months pregnant, but hadn't come for any antenatal care. I asked if she'd had sex the night before. She'd come in because she'd had a little bleeding. I looked at the partner as mum said yes, and he said nothing to do with me. I'm just the baby daddy. Turns out she had a new boyfriend at home. This was just the guy she'd been with 3 months before. I popped her up on the table to examine her and straight away had to tell her that she was actually about 5 months along, but I would arrange a scan to confirm. The dude just got up and walked out. Turns out there was a third guy 5 months ago. I worked in a restaurant right after high school, and there was a couple who worked there too. When the girlfriend got pregnant, she dipped out on him and moved back to her family in Alaska. After a month or so, the boyfriend got enough cash together to follow her. He dropped out of college and got a job on her dad's fishing boat to support his new family. Months later the baby is born and it becomes more obvious why the girl took off. Because they're both white and that baby was black. I had a doctor that thought my boy wasn't mine because he came out blonde with blue eyes. I'm half native with dark hair / dark green eyes, and my dad is a blonde blue / green eyed dude. My wife is a very dark brunette and her dad is a blonde blue / green eyed dude. It got grandfathered in. He is tested genetically as mine, but the doctor was very iffy. Not quite on topic, but African American babies usually are much lighter skin right after birth and then tend to get a little darker. The nurses usually warn the fathers about this, but I guess no one had told this guy. We were in a C-section and the baby came out significantly lighter than the father and we all saw his face drop. Thankfully the nurses saw it and told him that the baby looked exactly like him. Laughed about it later. My mum's friend has 3 sons to her ex-husband. 2 of them look like him. The second one looks a lot like the man she left her husband for, but of course they didn't get together until after she divorced her husband. Doesn't help how her new partner very clearly has a favorite kid. My mom has had 2 boyfriends her entire life. It just so happens that she was on / off with them at the same time. During high school. Right after high school she gets pregnant and marries my father because he is the father of the baby, my brother. They go on to have my brother and then have me. Fast forward 50 years and my parents are still together, but recently, my father let it slip to me that he isn't entirely sure that my brother is his biological son. My brother and my father do not look alike, but I always assumed that it was because my brother looks a lot like my mom's side. Still, my father made it clear that whether or not I'm his biological dad, he is my son. I'm not sure if my brother ever suspected that he could be my mom's other boyfriend's son. But I asked my dad if he shouldn't tell my brother. My father said that if he is the biological father, then my brother might be hurt thinking that my dad always had suspicions, and that if he isn't the biological dad, it would only cause my father, my mother, and my brother pain. But I wonder whether my brother should know that there is doubt. When I was a student nurse, there was this one couple. Mother was Asian and husband was white. The husband had a brother, African American. He's adopted from what I remember. The mother had been in labor for around 12 hours and they were very excited to see their baby. I remember the father had been pacing my entire shift back and forth in the waiting room. When it came time to mount the mother on the table, he asked the doctor if he could be in the room. He was grinning like a madman. It was a very positive energy. You could almost get completely absorbed by it. The doctor was a nice guy. He let us get him some throwaway scrubs and let him stay in the room. All in all, the actual birthing process was pretty standard. However, when the baby came out, then came the rough part. He was a normal, healthy, half African American boy, around 3 kilograms. I just looked at the baby, then looked at the father and watched his face go from joy to puzzlement to horror in around 10 seconds. The mother called out for her child and the doctor, being all business, cut and suctioned the baby. I'm pretty sure at that moment the father broke because he sort of just stepped back and kept saying "what the frick" under his breath. I didn't get to see much of them for the next 2 hours, but I was there when the mother was brought to her room. Her husband and his brother were there as well and she was talking to them. From what I saw, she was trying to console her husband and his brother was trying to hug him. The husband kind of just kept shrugging off his brother's arms and crying into his hands. It was a really tough thing to see, but all in all it wasn't really as dramatic as you'd expect. I'm a doctor, and the story actually involved my colleague, so I'm friends with this guy who we'll call Nut in med school. We're not close friends, but we have some common friends, and we shared some rotations together, and this girl we'll name Mary. Mary was already married at the time and had a 3-year-old daughter. Nut and Mary were close, but Mary got held back because Mary got pregnant and therefore had to temporarily stop studying. During that time, me and Nut became interns, and Nut began hanging out often with another girl named Belle. Nut and Belle weren't that close or physical with each other, so it came as a surprise when 2 months before internship ended, we found out that Belle was pregnant. Turns out that the two were frick buddies the entire time. Anyway, they graduated, and eventually Belle gave birth to a baby boy, who looked like Nut's miniature clone. It was as if the baby got nothing out of the mother, at all. Some of us even joked that Nut's seed was just that strong that he doesn't create offspring. He creates clones. Now, Mary eventually caught up with her studies, and entered junior internship, so she got to rotate with some of us, and when she showed us the picture of her baby boy, he also looked exactly like Nut. Note that we knew what Mary's husband looked like, and what Mary's daughter looked like. Her son looked just like Nut, so much that if you placed her son beside Belle's, you could easily mistake them as twins. We did just that. Not sure what happened to them now. I moved to a nearby hospital, but I never really talked to any of the three. But last I heard from Nuts and my mutual friend, Nuts' partner, he claimed he won't marry her. And son were left in a city around 4 hours away. Belle worked there. Mary's husband, daughter, and son were in the US. Mary's husband was studying aeronautics or SMTH similar, and Nut and Mary were on duty the same day at the same hospital. My husband is a surgical technician. Years ago he helped deliver a baby via emergency C-section. The baby was black and born to 2 very white parents. The dad freaked out and left the hospital with the mom in tears. The doctor convinced him to get a paternity test and he did end up being the father. Genetics is weird. I work in an NICU and frequently babies will come down to our units accompanied by their father while mom is still getting stitched up, and it is usually the time when fathers will question us about how to do a paternity test, or they will ask us questions like, does this baby look half black to you? Or would you say this baby could be mine or not? We've also had an occasion where mom has admitted to us dad isn't baby's father, but we're not legally able to say anything, so we just have to pretend we know nothing and we'll just submit a social work consult to look into the situation a bit more. Obligatory, not a doctor. Fremulin. But I know a couple that were very excited to have twins. Baby birthday comes. Mom and dad are in the delivery room. Baby 1 comes out and it's immediately clear they aren't his. He's white. She's white. The babies are not. The community was shook. They're divorced now. Not a doctor/nurse. When my wife was in hospital giving birth, there was another girl in the same room. Her husband was absolutely in love with her and soon-to-be-born son. I spoke a lot with this guy. We talked about how we're gonna play with our kids and so on. After the birth, I never saw him again. But I saw the child. No way it was his. By the time she was in hospital, he moved out and filed for divorce. She tried to sue him for child support and won. He left the country and doesn't pay. She is struggling with huge financial problems. My wife still has contact with her. No happy ending here. Okay. I have two stories that aren't exactly what the OP asked, but still applicable. 1. A woman came to the OR with abdominal pain. She was there with her girlfriend. We ran a pregnancy test per protocol. Don't ever trust a patient when it comes to sexual history. So I got to break the news to this lesbian couple that one of them was unexpectedly pregnant. And, yes, I tried to discreetly tell the patient the news alone, but she insisted anything I had to say should be done so in front of her girlfriend. Okay. But I don't think that was the prize she was expecting. Baby daddy showed up, commotion ensued. Security had to get involved when girlfriend started attacking baby daddy. 2. A teenage mom brought her newborn to the OR to be evaluated for something fairly minor. New parent. Didn't really know what she was doing. There was also this teenage guy in the room. So I asked his relationship to the patient. He said he was the stepdad. Apparently he had been dating the mom for about a month. Baby is about 3 weeks old. It took me a few minutes to wrap my head around that one. For his own sake, I really hope that dumb guy didn't sign the birth certificate. My cousin has dark skin. Like our entire family is pasty white, but he looks Hispanic. It was a joke for a long time in my family, including between he and his dad, about his dad not being his real father, like they'd call each other, alleged father and alleged son. Anyway, my aunt and uncle got into the whole Ancestry.com thing like 10 years ago, and turns out my aunts, who married into our family, great-grandfather was black. She was pasty white like us, but apparently her mom had darker skin too, but just looked Southern Italian, which she also was. Maybe not related, but sort of a funny story. This happened to me actually. No one said anything to me about their suspicions. 2 years later it comes out that my daughter wasn't biologically mine. By that time I only saw her as my daughter and nothing else. After months of depression and confusion I worked it out where I left the mom and I adopted the little girl. She's raised as my daughter and I don't see her any other way. I've read a lot of comments on how the newborn clearly didn't resemble the father, but I have a problem with this. Like, how can you tell? It's a newborn. They're purplish gray and look like tiny old people. I've had a friend give birth to a baby that looked Asian with dark brown skin. My friend and her husband are white, looked nothing like her or the father for the first couple of months. Later on her skin turned paler as well. There was a white couple who had a black child. When the baby was born the husband tried to divorce the mother. The court ordered a genetic testing to prove the mother's case and it was indeed the man's child. The skin tone was simply a different color because of an unknown family history on one of their sides. It doesn't help anything or anyone to jump to conclusions. Please subscribe if you like the video. It really helps the channel to grow. Adios.